In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NFL games happening on December 28, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NFL games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Jacksonville Jaguars versus Indianapolis Colts. Jacksonville comes into this matchup trying to keep their streak alive, and they have hung at least 34 points on the board in 3 straight games. They are one of the hottest teams in the league right now, and they already smacked this same Colts team by 17 just a few weeks ago. On the other side, Indianapolis is basically begging for a better defensive showing after giving up 48 to the 49ers last week. Philip Rivers will get the keys again, and to be fair, he has actually been reasonably solid in his first 2 starts, even if it has not felt spectacular. That is the funny thing with veteran quarterbacks. Sometimes the box score looks fine while the game feels a bit wobbly. The Jaguars have the stronger overall record and have been very good on the road, which matters here. The Colts, though, have been almost perfect at home, so it is not like this is some cupcake travel spot for Jacksonville. Still, these two teams are heading in opposite directions, with Indianapolis riding 4 straight losses while Jacksonville has 6 wins in a row and has covered the spread in all 6. Momentum is not everything, but when one locker room keeps stacking wins and the other keeps explaining losses, it tends to leak into how they play and how aggressive they are. Jacksonville's offense is absolutely rolling, and the defense is doing the annoying thing every opponent hates: getting key stops and forcing turnovers at the right moments. Trevor Lawrence has tossed 12 touchdowns with 0 interceptions in his last 4 games, which not only juices the scoreboard, it also calms down the entire sideline. The Jaguars' run defense has been one of the best units in the league, so they can tilt the Colts into a more one-dimensional look. Because of that, I expect Indianapolis to have a tough time establishing the ground game, and Rivers is likely to feel steady pressure from this Jacksonville pass rush. That is usually where mistakes show up, not always as interceptions, but as stalled drives and field goals instead of touchdowns. Against the number, Jacksonville has covered in 6 straight games, doing it by an average margin of almost 17 points per game. So the market keeps nudging the lineup, and the Jaguars keep clearing it anyway. Given how they just watched Brock Purdy and the 49ers blow the Colts off the field, I am expecting something similar emotionally on Sunday, even if the exact script looks a bit different. I would honestly love to see the Colts grab a big win here. There is something fun about a veteran quarterback pulling one out of the fire. But Jacksonville is rolling right now, and I simply cannot trust this Indianapolis defense to get enough stops when it actually matters. The numbers for these teams look fairly similar on both sides of the ball if you zoom out, but with the way things have gone lately, I end up leaning strongly to Jacksonville, especially with them being 4-1 in their last 5 meetings against the Colts. So for the spread, I expect the Jaguars not only to cover, but to win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. As our first pick for this matchup, the Jacksonville Jaguars to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Offensively, the Colts are putting up 28 points per game, which is good enough for 6th in the league, and they are allowing 21.6 points per game, which slots them 13th. They average 357.9 total yards per game, with roughly 229 through the air and 128.9 on the ground. Defensively, they are giving up 342.7 total yards per game, with 95.1 rushing yards allowed and 247.6 passing yards allowed. The Jaguars' offense is not far behind on raw scoring, averaging 27.3 points per game, which ranks 7th, and their defense is allowing just 20.8 points per game, good for 10th. They are gaining 336.4 total yards per game, with about 218.3 passing and 118.1 rushing. On defense, they are giving up 317.6 total yards per game, with only 87.3 rushing yards allowed and 230.3 through the air. So both teams can move the ball, and both defenses are solid enough to get stops but not so suffocating that you expect a low-scoring slugfest. Since Jacksonville's bye week, the over is 6-2, largely because the offense has exploded under Trevor Lawrence's current form. Liam Cohen has been sharp with the play calling, dialing up looks that keep this attack on schedule and then taking shots when defenses finally creep up. That is why the Jaguars have been averaging 33 points per game since the bye. They keep stretching the field and finishing drives. The Colts defense is beaten up with injuries, and we just watched the 49ers run the total up so much that they basically cashed the number on their own on Monday night. When a unit is that banged up, communication breaks, tackling suffers, and suddenly routine plays turn into 20-yard gains. Indianapolis is still chasing a playoff shot and needs help elsewhere, so they cannot just sit on the ball and hope. They have to keep throwing punches offensively right through the fourth quarter. That kind of desperation usually leads to more snaps, more passes, and yes, more scoring, even if some of it comes in catch-up mode late. Jacksonville should be able to get back up into the 30s again with the way their offense is humming, and I expect the Colts to do enough through the air to push the combined total into the 50s. So for the total, this shapes up much more like a game where points keep coming than one where the defense is totally clamped down. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus Miami Dolphins. Tampa Bay walks into this Week 17 trip to Miami desperate to stop a 3-game skid, and this feels like a classic season-tipping spot for them. Their playoff shot basically hangs on this, since a loss combined with a Carolina win would knock them out, so the urgency is real. The one silver lining for the Bucs is that Carolina has to deal with Seattle, and the even brighter spot is that Miami has been flat-out bad lately. This matchup really does look like just what the doctor ordered for Baker Mayfield and the rest of this offense to settle down and get back on track. The Dolphins have surrendered 36.5 points per game over their last 2 outings, including 45 to the Bengals this past weekend, which is brutal by any standard. Defensively, they sit 26th against the run and 26th in yards allowed per pass attempt, so they are leaking yardage almost everywhere. On top of that, they have only 7 interceptions all season, tied for just 24th in the league, so they are not even stealing extra possessions. In that kind of soft defensive environment, Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka, and Bucky Irving should all find ways to be plenty productive. Miami did put together a surprise 4-game winning streak out of nowhere, and for a brief moment it looked like they had flipped a switch. But that push clearly looks like the exception, not the rule, especially when you remember they opened the season at 1-6. Over the last 2 weeks, they have slid right back into losing form, falling 28-15 against Pittsburgh and then getting hammered 45-21 at home by the Bengals in Week 16. That Bengals game was the first NFL start for Quinn Ewers after Tua Tagovailoa was benched, and so far, in his 2 appearances, Ewers has 0 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. Miami has dropped those contests by a combined 76-27 margin, which pretty much tells you everything about where this team is right now. My confidence in the Buccaneers is not exactly sky high after their recent run, and that probably matches how a lot of people feel watching them. Even so, this sets up as a game they should win almost by default given how poor Miami has been on both sides of the ball. Tampa Bay should be able to handle its part of the equation on Sunday, and it would not be surprising if they did it with relative ease. As our first pick for this matchup, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Now, on the scoring side of things, it is important to remember that any talk about offensive success for the Bucs comes with some context. They have topped 20 points just once since Week 11, and even that was only a 28-point showing in a home loss to the Falcons. Mayfield has reached the 200-yard passing mark only once since Week 10, so the passing game has not exactly been lighting it up. A few of Tampa Bay's skill guys have made it back onto the field, which helps a bit, but wide receiver Chris Godwin Jr. is still listed as questionable. The offensive line is also banged up, with Tristan Wirfs and Luke Goedeke both questionable, and that sort of uncertainty up front usually drags scoring down. The biggest reason to lean toward a lower total this weekend, though, sits on the Miami side of the ball. Their offense has been stuck in neutral for a while. You cannot really argue with the decision to bench Tagovailoa. It felt like a necessary move more than anything else, but it has not provided any instant spark. The offense was shaky with him, and it has been even worse with Ewers stepping in. The sample size with Ewers is still small, sure, but nothing in these last 2 weeks suggests a sudden surge is coming in the final 2 games. Realistically, the Dolphins' only clear path on offense is to lean heavily on Devon Achane in the run game and hope he breaks something open. The problem is that Tampa Bay ranks 7th in the league against the run, so that primary plan runs right into one of the Bucs' biggest strengths. If Miami cannot run it consistently and the passing game stays this clunky, long drives and big point totals become very hard to manufacture. When you put all that together, you get a picture where both teams have some limitations in how much they can score, even if one side is more dysfunctional than the other. The Bucs' recent struggles moving the ball, combined with a Dolphins offense that has stalled under a new quarterback and a tough matchup in the trenches, point more toward a game that grinds rather than explodes. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Pittsburgh Steelers versus Cleveland Browns. One of the more intriguing Week 17 matchups comes in Cleveland, where the Browns host the Steelers in an American Football Conference North clash that feels more emotional than the standings might suggest. Cleveland has shown real flashes since turning to Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, and even though the rookie was flat and played a very poor game last week, the Browns still covered the spread against the Bills as home underdogs without much drama. That is important because Buffalo brings a far stronger offense than what Cleveland will see from Pittsburgh, so the challenge drops a notch here. On top of that, this is not an ideal situational spot for the Steelers at all. They are coming off a trio of massive wins over the Lions, Dolphins, and Ravens, which is the type of run that can leave a team both confident and a little emotionally drained. They have gone from sitting on the outside looking into suddenly having the inside track to the American Football Conference North crown and a first-round home game in January. The twist is that they do not even need to win this particular game to wrap up the division, since a loss by a short-handed Ravens squad would also clinch it for them. With that in mind, it is perfectly reasonable to think Pittsburgh might not be at peak sharpness against what many still view as the lowly Browns. Cleveland has been a genuine tale of two teams this season. At home, the Browns have been one of the most profitable sides against the spread over the last 3 seasons, and it starts with a defense that consistently makes life miserable for opposing quarterbacks. Just last week, they held the Bills' offense in check, which makes the upcoming test against the Steelers feel a bit less intimidating by comparison. This is also a spot where the weather is expected to matter quite a bit, with significant and sustained winds likely swirling in Cleveland again, making every yard feel like a small battle. When you mix that defensive edge at home with tricky conditions and a potentially flat favorite, all signs point toward a tight contest rather than a runaway. So grabbing the points with the home underdog on Sunday feels very reasonable, especially if you think Pittsburgh eases off the gas even slightly. As our first pick for this matchup, the Cleveland Browns to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Pittsburgh comes in hungry to lock up the American Football Conference North and punch a ticket back to the postseason. And even though this one is on the road, their current form shows they can move the ball in tough environments. The Steelers have stacked 3 straight wins and just went into Detroit and came out with a victory, which is never a simple road trip, so the offense is clearly doing enough to keep them in the high-leverage moments. Cleveland, on the other hand, has dropped 4 in a row overall, but that does not mean the scoreboard has been silent. 2 of their 3 wins this season have come at home, and they just went toe-to-toe with Buffalo last week, which suggests they can hang around on offense when things click even a little. There is also that lingering doubt about this Steelers defense, and that skepticism naturally tilts the expectation toward more points on both sides rather than a total clampdown. Even if you are not fully sold on Pittsburgh's ability to shut anyone down for 4 quarters, their offense has shown it can put up enough points to keep games lively. Cleveland has scored at least 20 points in 3 of its last 5 games, which is not explosive, but it is steady enough to matter when you are thinking about a total rather than a winner. If the Browns can get back into that 20-point neighborhood again, and the Steelers maintain their recent scoring level, the combined number starts creeping up toward a range that threatens the projected total. So with one team that can score and another that has quietly hit the 20-point mark often enough, the setup leans more toward a game where the scoreboard keeps moving for both sides. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. New England Patriots versus New York Jets. New England just put together a pretty strong overall effort on the road against a good Ravens team, piling up 453 total yards and 24 first downs. They did cough up a couple of turnovers and went only 4 of 12 on 3rd down, so it was not perfect, but it was still a convincing response after that 4-point loss to Buffalo the week before. It also fit the bigger pattern, with the Patriots scoring 23 or more points in each of their last 12 games and going 11-1 over that stretch, which is the kind of run that quietly builds a lot of confidence in the locker room and in betting markets. The last time these two teams met back on November 13th, New England handled its business at home with a 27-14 win. The Patriots finished that one with 336 yards, 23 first downs, and a solid 6 of 12 on third down, which is exactly the kind of efficiency that wears on a weaker roster. The Jets managed only 245 total yards, just 105 passing yards, and 15 first downs, so they were playing uphill all afternoon. On paper, New England clearly has the tools to hit hard again here. They sit inside the top 10 in both scoring offense and scoring defense, which is rare air, and the Jets are struggling badly on both sides of the ball. If you only looked at raw strength, you would probably assume this should be a comfortable favorite rolling over a mismatch. Here is the thing though, the spot matters. This feels like a classic letdown situation for the Patriots after that big emotional road win over the Ravens. It also has the feel of a win and get out of there kind of game, with the focus already drifting a little toward playoff positioning and staying healthy rather than making a statement. You have the added wrinkle that this is a division matchup, and these teams know each other extremely well. The underdog has covered 3 of the last 4 meetings, which is a nice little reminder that these games can stay closer than the talent gap suggests. On top of that, even with all the winning and a pretty soft schedule, this is only the second time since 2023 that New England has been asked to cover a double-digit number. Odds makers have not shown this level of belief in them very often, which makes grabbing the points with the Jets feel a lot less crazy than it sounds at first glance. As our first pick for this matchup, the New York Jets to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Unsurprisingly, Cook has not looked like an NFL-ready quarterback so far. Through 3 outings, his QBR sits at 9.7, which is the kind of number people usually joke about, not something you actually see in the stats page. Now he has to deal with a New England defense that ranks in the top 10 in yards allowed per pass attempt, which is not exactly a friendly environment for a struggling passer. Given that setup, it is very likely that New York leans heavily on the run game. That approach helps them shorten the contest, keep the clock moving, and limit how many possessions they have to survive against a far stronger opponent on paper. The issue is that the Patriots rank 6th in the league against the run, so even that safer plan runs right into a real strength on the other side. You can see the impact of all this in the scoring sheet. In 6 of their last 10 games, the Jets have scored 14 points or fewer. That stretch includes ugly outputs of 11, 6, 10, 10, and 6 points, which paints a pretty clear picture of just how hard every yard has felt. On the flip side, New England quarterback Drake May is playing at an MVP level, and that level of play usually leads to fireworks. But there is a twist here. If this game tilts strongly in one direction early, it sets up a script where the side in control can lean heavily on the ground game to churn the clock instead of constantly pushing for more style points. Once New England shifts into that mode, the Jets' defense may actually find some success against the run, especially if the calls become more predictable. Their 4.4 yards per carry allowed is only slightly worse than the league average, which is serviceable enough in a game where you know what is coming most of the time. New England also has a long list of offensive players listed as questionable for Sunday, which introduces even more uncertainty about how explosive they can afford to be or want to be. Combine that with a Jets offense led by Cook that has been stuck in the mud most weeks, and it naturally nudges expectations toward a lower scoring outcome. So even with a relatively short number on the board, the mix of a struggling passing attack on one side, a strong run defense on the other, and a potential clock-chewing game script tilts this matchup toward the under. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. New Orleans Saints versus Tennessee Titans. Most of the Week 17 schedule is filled with teams chasing playoff spots, but this Saints versus Titans matchup is not exactly appointment viewing for most fans. That said, there is still a little value tucked into this game, and it sits with the roadside. The market has been slowly catching up to how much better the Saints have played in the second half of the season, and they kept that roll going with a 29-6 win over the struggling Jets last week. That victory gave New Orleans 3 straight wins and also made it 4 consecutive games where they cashed against the spread. Tyler Show stepping in at quarterback has been a clear upgrade over Spencer Rattler for an offense that badly needed some kind of spark. He is also coming off the best outing of his young career in that win over New York, which always matters more than people admit because confidence spreads through a locker room pretty quickly. That sort of momentum should carry into this matchup against a Titans defense that is banged up and missing some key pieces. On the other side, Tennessee has shown a little life here and there lately, including a win over the sliding Chiefs last week. But Kansas City had already been eliminated and had nothing meaningful to play for in that one, which takes some shine off that result. On top of that, the Titans' defense spent a good chunk of that game facing a third-string quarterback, so the path was as friendly as it gets in the NFL. They are unlikely to get anything close to that kind of break this time. Quietly, the Saints have stacked those 3 straight wins and look like a group that actually wants to finish the year with some pride. The Titans, by contrast, keep finding ways to lose and do not bring a lot of positive buzz, sitting below average on both offense and defense. They have not managed to win 2 straight games since November 2022, which is a long, dry spell for any team that wants to be taken seriously. New Orleans has covered in 5 of its last 6 games, and they are 2-1 straight up and against the spread this season when laying points. Given all that, backing the Saints and laying the number makes sense with the way their arrow is pointing right now. As our first pick for this matchup, the New Orleans Saints to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The total for this game has been pushed down a few points from where it opened, and it is not hard to understand why. The Titans' offense has shown a small spark recently, but it still grades out as one of the worst units in the league, sitting 30th in EPA per play and 31st in success rate. That kind of profile usually does not suddenly flip, especially when you factor in that it is tough to see Cam Ward and the rest of that group hanging a big number in rainy, windy conditions on Sunday. Weather games can get ugly fast, with drives stalling on simple mistakes. On the other side, the Saints have scored at least 20 points in 3 straight games, which looks nice on the surface. However, those performances came in friendlier environments, with scoring conditions that were much more favorable than what is expected here. This setup looks a lot more like a grind than a track meet, even if New Orleans is the more functional offense at the moment. It is not the most appealing wager on the entire card, and it certainly is not a play to fall in love with, but the only realistic lean here is toward a lower scoring game and a total that stays under the number. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.